up, it seemed like it was.
I would say that to anybody who sees this or listens to this in the future, it took me probably as long to get, once I made the decision I wanted to get back in the presence of God, it took me as long to get from there to that presence as it did as I walked away. So we want to be very careful when we make life decisions.
You want paper
Because
bags?
usually, when we make a life decision, we do it in an attitude or a time frame that it doesn't seem like a big deal to us. But they can be devastating. And the grace of God has been so great.
And he likes me.
And I'll tell you, it's been God's mercy and blessing that he gave me an arena that I could learn to love. You know, when you're kids, you don't have a clue about loving God's way. All we think about is eros. That's essential kind of love. But to love God's way is a giving love, and not very many people are blessed with a circumstance that allows them to develop that. And so, with my wife, I'm so God's been so good to me in that I have the opportunity of loving every day. I have the opportunity of loving his way. No hope of return, nothing in return. Just do it, Don. Just do it. And I'm happy. I'm so glad. I'm happy. I'm much happier doing this than when we were first married. And we had one Jim Dandy marriage when we were first married. But we're right next to heaven's door. We're right next to eternity, stepping into eternity. And so now, this is what heaven is about, is loving God. And Jesus said, you fulfill all the commandments in the law if you love me and love your neighbor as yourself. You fulfill it all. And so when I love my wife, and I do for her all that I could do, I'm giving glory to God. And I don't feel any sparks going. There's no lightning flashing, but I know that gives God glory because it's doing what he has told me to do. And I've been looking a long time to find that little key right there. Because I've wanted to do something for God that you would pay attention to, that you would know, and everybody would know. Well, that's not the way it is. It's those little things like Jesus said, you want to talk to God? Go hide yourself in a corner someplace, in a closet. Talk to God. So nobody else knows about it. Just you and God. And that's the way loving God's way is.
And I would like to add something that's different, but you know, when God sees your need, he fulfills it through many different avenues. Like when we first moved here, it'll be 7 years soon to this house. And I started going to Adventure, you know, and Dad started, and they asked me to work the counter, you know, and I learned to really reach out and love people in a way that I had never, it was different. Rick, the pastor, he was a loving man, you know. He wasn't much of a
Preacher.
Well, I didn't want to say preacher, but he didn't feed you the depth that you were hungry for because you'd already been fed a lot of things, and a lot of times you don't want to eat things over and over and over and over again, especially if they don't, you know, bring life to your spirit, you know. And one day there was a phone call that came. It was before we moved here, actually. We was in the apartment still. And somebody called and they said, I'd like you to teach. And I go, I played the message and I thought, yeah, sure. That's what I thought, because I thought I hadn't taught for a long time, since I'd been back where Jenny and Lee was. And anyway, I met with her and Erica Rispoli. She's been another dear friend of mine. And she asked me to start teaching women's classes. And I had the biggest classes, and I didn't do anything for it to happen. It just happened. And the women, I still have connects. Some of them live in Washington. They call me. They're precious, just precious. Love God. And I'm just telling you how God makes footprints ahead and footsteps. That He knows you can walk in. You don't know that necessarily, but He knows. And He's never failed me.
Now, both of you have spoken about ministry and love and giving your life for Christ, following Jesus, and serving others, and that being one of the most important things you can do as a Christian, let alone a human being. So you also mentioned, Papa, that you're at death's doors, so to speak, as far as the season of life. So then my question would be, what does your future hold? What now? How will you continue in that vein of lifestyle for the remainder of your life, your years?
Every day is a new opportunity to know God, to commune with God, to love God, and to love people around me. Everybody, to love people. And every day is we have an opportunity to face that day and be conscious of making right decisions. No matter what it is, who I talk to, how I think, what I do, how I treat people, that's all a conscious decision. And we have that opportunity to do that. And each day that goes by, I'm one day closer to that time when Jesus will say, enter thou into my presence that I've been longing for 50 years. Longing for that day.
Yep.
Anything to add, Mom?
Well, I'm not totally 100% looking forward to dying. Not that I'm fearful of death, but we didn't know where to go to church. We had been sick for about off and on for 6 years, me for 6 years straight, Papa with his surgery for his heart and his hip. And it seemed like we had been very active people, having people over, them having us over, just a lot of things. And we ended up, it just became very, where do I want? It was very lonely, really. And then we started going to this church over here called Bridgeway, and they were teaching on the Revelation, he's been very good. He's a man of 38 years old and loves the people and really has an anointing to preach and the Word of God, and you can feel it. And then in all this, I'm meeting people that are sick, that have physical problems. One woman is about 40 years old, and the other one's in her 60s, and both of them really got issues, not cancer, but issues. And I'm finding that God puts us with people of like passion and faith, so that we can help one another. And he does it. I mean, you can tell he's done it. I mean, I couldn't have found him in a church of 2,000, Excuse, I'm sorry, Benji.
It's only 3 times. That's not that bad.
Oh. Hello.
Hi, my name is Linda. I'm calling from Dr. John Schaefer's office for Miriam Warner.
That's me, because we know a lot of the kids over there, and at the mall, Galleria Mall, and we went in there the other day to eat, and the manager talks to us a lot. We know her pretty well, or she'll sit with us and talk with us, and she was telling me about her neck, And I said, well, I need to go to a neurologist, but I had to wait quite a while because they were so busy. And she says, well, I go to one, and I says, what's his name? She says, John Schaefer, and I go, oh, that's where I'm going. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like we already had a couple of appointments scheduled with you.
Earlier on, but I didn't have all the stuff I got now.
Okay, so I rescheduled you for tomorrow, Tuesday, the 12th at 8 a.m.
And you're still in the same address we have. Can I go put something on my mouth? It's so.
Yeah.
It's so.
All right. So me mom shared how you guys met in the hospital after Jackie died. So Jackie is my mom. Katie.
Well, I met him actually sooner because I did his
Really?
paperwork. But I mean, not as anybody. I mean, I knew that she was. They said she was going to die, and I had talked to her several times. You know, when he brought her in, because he brought her in quite a bit, right?
Yeah.
And but as far as there being anything there, nothing.
So then, Papa, how did you meet Jackie?
Well, we were in school, met her in high school. I met her in high school, and we married very young, and had our 2 children. And then, working the way I did, I ended up going to San Jose, and she went to church, went to Assembly of God Church, and I didn't know anything about it. We came back to Red Bluff. I took her to Sacramento. I took her to Redding, to the hospital, and after a period of time, she died there in the hospital, and we just didn't communicate. And then so I met Miriam. We got married, and we were on the way to Oakland, I think, and the freeway crossed like this, and I saw a fellow, and they saw me, that I had worked with, and that had been in Milpitas, is where it was, San Jose. And so he waved me down. I stopped, and he came back, and he was a Christian, and he said, Don, did you know that before you left down there, that your wife gave her heart to Jesus in one of the women's groups? And this is, now I'm saved. See, I got saved. Didn't know she was. And I thought, the grace of God. Now, the children's mother is saved, will be in heaven with them. How marvelous, how marvelous. Absolutely marvelous. Just overwhelming.
So how many years were you married to Jackie before she died?
6 years.
And what attracted you to her?
Well, we were just kids in school.
That easy, huh?
That's it, yeah.
That's good. And what do you most value about me, Mom? What are some things that you cherish, appreciate, think are beautiful?
Well, I have to say that that telephone is going to wear us out.
Call from 9.
Hello.
Shut it off.
Hey, Jeannie, I was gonna call you. Not until the 27th.
Okay.
Good Jesus.
Papa, you were saying some things that you like about your wife.
When I first met her, she asked me if I was saved. She was very forward about her faith, and that enabled me to find that and become saved, to find that wonderful gift of salvation. And she has never relented. She's never given up or backed up in any way. She has been saved and has advocated being saved and knowing and walking with Jesus for all of these years. And when we went through the deepest trial, she never faltered. She never became bitter, terribly, terribly hurt, but never bitter. And always forgiving. Couldn't ask for a better wife. And she allows me to love her, to care for her. Now that, not everybody can do that. And I appreciate that so much. She's a good woman.
Mimon, what do you value about Papa?
Everything. Everything. The fact that the Lord could show him himself and Satan didn't get to keep his hands on him and destroy him in another way, because he could have gone off because he was a neat guy and he was making good money. Well, he wasn't at least, but I mean, he was capable. And one point the Lord dealt with me. I was sending him money every month, and the Lord dealt with me to send him more, and I did. And I was living, in a small place in Mobile, in Paradise. And when I look back at life, I can see the footprints of Jesus, that they led me the way. I don't know if I was wondering if I told them there when Katie came in and she says, she plopped down in the chair and did her hair like this, and she said, my mother died, and I said, I know it, but Jesus will give you, did I say that part?
Mm-hmm.
Give you another nice mommy someday. Not thinking that it was me, because we hadn't had any interaction.
Now, I would seriously question that statement.
I know you
I
would.
think she had her hooks out for me from the very beginning, and I was a cooked goose. I didn't have a chance.
What can I say?
So what attracted you to Papa when you first saw him, or saw how he treated his kids or his wife, or
How he treated people, and treated his children. And when he brought Katie in, I mean, here he had been through a death, and here Katie comes in with a big thing on her neck. And 2 or 3 months later, I think it was, he brought her in. And I was hurting still from my life past, and it's like I could feel pain. I think that must have been when I started feeling other people's pain, because now I struggle with that. When I see somebody is going through sorrow or hurting, I just want to squeeze them.
Papa, what are 2 words that, if you could only pick 2 words out of all the world to tell somebody to convey who your wife is, what 2 words would you try and share?
She's been my lover and my friend.
Love our friend. What you mean, Mom, for Papa?
He's been faithful. Like I said, he always supported me. He never. He only told me two.
So faithful and
He always supported me. If he would have never financially, if he would have just left me high and dry after all those years, and I thought I was just used to raise children, I probably wouldn't have gone back. But because faithful every month, and to take care of me when I was by myself for that 3 years. And that's really amazing, And in the interim, that's when the Lord dealt with me to start sending him $200 more a month, and I was already sending you, what, 7?
5.
5, I don't remember. But, I mean, I felt like he needed more. I mean, I just wanted to give him more money. But through that time, I know you said 2 minutes, but through that time, I feel like I really grew, because I was able to reach out, like to Joyce, And then Tony, she was going through a hard place in her marriage. And I don't know everything, but I tried to hold her up, you know. And I mean, they're still together, and their kids are both in college. And I thank the Lord for that, you know. And she's still very precious to me, very precious.
So, speaking of your marriage, what are some of your favorite stories, either about each other or an experience you had together through the 30 some odd years, 40, right?
No, 54
54, holy cow.
this coming year.
Wow, that was 4 years ago we celebrated your 50th? Man. So, what are some stories of from the beginning to just 2 weeks ago? What are some funny, entertaining, or maybe they're not funny, but favorite stories that you guys have together? Or about the other person?
Well, Papa really loves people. And he's an usher where we go to church now, and there's little kids. Is there just one with autism?
Yeah.
And he tries to reach out to that little kid all the time, and the little kid draws back. He wants to give him a bulletin. And the people that come through. And when you show love to people that walk through the door, you don't know how they're hurting. If they're sick, you don't know anything about them. So I think that, I mean, his love toward the people and his willing to get in and help, be a servant.
Papa? Any fun or favorite stories you have?
I think that I think my wife has a gift of compassion. She's very compassionate for anybody and everybody, but people who are hurt, and it never fails that people will call her and share their problems with her, and she takes it to heart. And
Oh, I pray for
we're
him.
praying all the time for all these different people, and it's
Yeah.
it's a very difficult. The gifts of God are not all fun and games. The gifts of God, there's responsibility that comes with these gifts, all of them, all the gifts of God. There's a responsibility that comes, and sometimes it's difficult. And this particular gift is difficult because it demands attention, demands service for the individual that has the gift. And I've watched her without fail.
Briefly, what advice would you give to young couples? You've mentioned some things already, but is there any particular advice, wisdom that you would give to young couples or some of our family members, me included, that are not yet married?
Well, number one that popped in my head is don't let the sun go down on your wrath, because it can grow. And that's where Satan works. He comes to steal and destroy. And he uses those areas. And they may not be our way that we want to go, but we have to consider other people and consider their thinking and their feelings, you know. And because those kind of things can grow, and people split up just over some of the minutest things, you know. And that's not the way to go. That's why it's so careful about what you do. Because we almost didn't make it, for sure. But God, he divinely intervened. He just did.
I think that my advice to anybody really would be to become conscious of your decision-making process, and that everything requires attention. everything that we do that prospers requires attention. We have to pay attention to our wife or our husband, and we have to think about, make conscious decisions how we treat each other, uh, and not let emotion get involved. Emotion comes on the tail end, but you have to make decisions of how you're going to treat each other. How do you love each other? How do you express that love? I mean, according to my understanding, there's three kinds of love: eros and Philadelphia and Philemon or
Philly.
agape. And the agape is the highest kind of love, and that's a giving love that no return, hope of no return. It's just giving. And when a husband can treat his wife and his family in that way, loving and giving and caring for their needs, they build something that is it's godly, and it works.
Got too warm.
There you go, beautiful lady.
Got too warm.
So we've talked about you as a couple. So now let's talk about you as a family. When did you first find out that you'd be a parent, and how did it make you feel?
You mean before marriage?
Yeah, just when did you find out you were going to be a parent, and how did it make you feel?
I just remember walking down the stairs one day and getting nauseated. That's how I knew I was going to be one.
And so when you realized you were going to have a child,
I was so young and stupid it wasn't even funny.
how old were you?
17.
So were you scared, feel guilty, excited? Were you married?
Yes.
Okay.
But I knew I shouldn't have married the man that I married. And I was very despondent over that.
So being in that position and now being pregnant, what went through your mind?
I was just young. My mom was a very caring person, and she was going through a lot herself. And then I ended up on a deathbed for 5 months in the hospital. And I told the Lord if He'd let me live to raise my 2 children, that I would serve Him the rest of my life. And I purposed in I weighed 87 pounds. They rolled me in the hall 3 times to die. And when I came out of that, I kept that in my heart. I didn't want, my life had already been messed up and I didn't want any more. And He made a way for my children I worked, my kids got fed.
How about you, Papa? When did you first find out you were going to be a dad, and how'd that make you feel?
Well, there was a sense of weight that went with that, a responsibility, and I was overjoyed. I kept thinking about all the negative things that can happen in a birth, and boy, I was so happy to see that little boy come out of there, and he had all his fingers and arms and legs, and it was all okay. And Katie, oh, wonderful. I thoroughly enjoyed them. I just really did. Great to be a dad.
Great to be a mom too.
Me, Mom, can you describe the moment when you saw Uncle Fred for the first time and got to hold him? Do you remember?
I had Karen first, you know.
Oh, that's right.
Well, it took me 36 hours in labor. She was born cyanotic. And I was glad she was alive.
Hmm.
You know.
And how about Fred?
When he was born, they were singing the old lamplighter outside over and over, and they induced labor because I was overdue, and he weighed over 8 pounds, and Karen only weighed 7 something, and I remember they put me on the gurney and put me on a elevator and said that I was going to deliver, and they slapped my legs together because I was going to just pop them out. And I said, I didn't come here. I remember this. I didn't come here to hold them back. I came here to have them. And that's before you even knew what kind of baby you were going to have. They didn't tell you beforehand. They didn't have the apparatus to do that. Man, this is a crazy life.
So did you have him in the elevator?
No. No, they held my legs together.
How about Jackie? How'd those births go? Did they go as planned?
Yeah.
He was so normal. I was so crazy.
And here's a question I just thought of. What were the moms like when it came time to have a kid the day of? Were they calm? Were they in the room? What was the scene like? Can you paint the scene of birthday of your 4 kids?
No.
Par for the course.
Honest,
All right.
I don't remember.
I think you'll be able to come up with something for this. What is your favorite or some of your favorite memories of your 4 kids as children? Those early years, you had 4 of them running around. What are some of your favorite memories or experiences or adventures?
When every night we had family altar at the end of our bed.
And what is family altar?
Family altar was, we would pray and pray for people and pray for one another and tell whatever we did. If we did something wrong, we'd tell it, you know. And that's the time that Katie said, I stole a quarter from your wallet. Did you hear that before?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, she just says, I stole a quarter. Remember that, honey?
Yeah, she was looking to get attention.
So what'd you do? Like, what was your response to that?
I don't even remember. I just remember her doing it.
That's cool.
She was a springy kid. Do you know what I mean? She was spunky. Lee was more phlegmatic, you know. But Katie was more, well, Lee was very sick when we got married, too. He got very sick. And remember that, honey?
Mm-hmm.
He had pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember Katie was a biter. Did you know that? Oh, gosh. She would take the kids by the back like this and go in the middle of their back, even our neighbor little kid. Ask her. Remember that, honey?
Well,
What are some other things about Fred and Karen and Lee and Katie? Things they said, places you took them.
Well, back then, people didn't have very much money to take anybody anywhere, you know. I mean, you never thought, oh, we'll go to Disneyland, oh, we'll fly here, or we'll go to Florida, we'll do that. You just didn't do that.
So what were Christmases like in the early days?
Just Christmas trees and presents, usually one present per person. That's what we could afford. That was early on.
Mm-hmm.
And then it changed, you know, to better, more financial.
when we first were married,
Uh-huh.
and I went to the store, I grabbed 2 shopping carts and I chucked them full of food. And I just had a ball doing that. Went to the shoe store, bought 4 pairs of shoes.
And
And I
pogo
thought that was
sticks.
the greatest thing I could do.
And
That
pogo
was
sticks.
wonderful.
Remember the pogo sticks?
Oh, and then for Christmas, yeah. Christmas, that first Christmas, They had pogo sticks and everything we could
We all
find
had
like
pogo
that.
sticks and jumped in the garage.
Yeah, that was great fun.
Papa, what was it like